Welcome to the Hispanic Patriot. There's another edition, a special edition. We're a weekly podcast broadcast live from a secret, undisclosed location deep behind enemy lines in Denver, Colorado. Here we speak the truth and nothing but the truth, so help us God. And now, without further ado, here's the host host is gone. I'm your host this evening, Peter, but we have a special guest here, Mr. George Rodriguez, A.K.A. El Conservador. So Hugo is on vacation for the next couple of weeks in Spain, of all places. So poor guy, he's slumming it up out there. But we have Mr. Rodriguez, El Conservador, and so graciously decided to fill in for Hugo. So thank you, George, and welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be here. I understand that Hugo's refreshing his Hispanic roots on the Iberian Peninsula, so that's pretty neat. I wish him well, but thank you very much. I really feel privileged that he invited me to sit in as a host while he's gone. I really appreciate the invitation.
Well, we're honored to have you, and I'm excited to get into the issues and guys, some of the topics that you have here that we're going to be getting into. I want to hear about all of it, and so I hope we can cram enough in. If we can't, we're going to get you back. But
you got it.
We're going to talk this evening. Just a brief highlight for everybody listening. Three main we're going to be covering with Mr. Rodriguez. We have the border crisis, we have Hispanic Heritage Month, and then we have liberal communications and Hispanic. So essentially liberal racism and a few other interesting topics that I really want to hear what Mr. Rodriguez has to say about these.
Please call me George.
Okay, I will do so. Now, but before we get into these, let's talk a little bit about what everybody's probably thinking and
the debate
about today, the debate.
Last night. What a food fight. Let me tell you, I was fascinated. I was fascinated by two things. First of all, that they didn't seem to learn how to conduct themselves without talking over each other, without arguing, without looking like it's a doggone kindergarten at moments. Yelling at each other and talking over each other. It just looks so very unprofessional. But then secondly, for whatever reason, Fox News invited, and I guess it was for diversity. I love that word, diversity. Mm-hmm. But for diversity reasons, they invited a reporter from Univision. And the thing that fascinated me with her, the two main questions that she had to do with immigration and with the Spanish language. She wanted to know whether or not they were going to take a strong stand on immigration when they became president. Well, I don't know if she's noticed, because obviously her network has not, but they have not noticed that there is a border crisis. This afternoon, this morning rather, I was down at the border doing some filming. And Peter, it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. The number of people that are crossing daily, crossing hourly. Mm-hmm. I remember, I grew up on the border. My grandparents grew up on the border. My great grandfather was very proud. He crossed in 1901 from Mexico. And he was very proud. We still have a copy of his card where he paid a dime. He paid 10 cents to cross the border legally. He used to talk endlessly with anger about Mexicans taking away jobs. That was in a period, when they used to just come across and work and then go back. If he was to see what's happening now, there was a group of about 30 individuals this morning, and they had They didn't speak Spanish. They didn't speak English. They spoke Farsi. They were from northern Pakistan, the Iranian connection there, and young men. Then there was another group that we found that were from Haiti, on and on and on. Univision does nothing to explain to the Spanish-speaking community and to the Spanish-speaking audience on the other side of the border that it's illegal for them to cross the border the way they're doing. They do nothing to that. On the contrary, they see all these people as being nothing more than victims of climate change, or victims of economics, or victims of whatever. And so therefore, somehow they have a right to come across. And so last night when she was asking questions about immigration, that killed me. The second question she asked was whether or not there was any of them were going to translate their campaigns, their campaign messages into Spanish. And that one really blew my mind. Again,
okay.
I mean, you come to this country and you expect to vote. By the time that you expect to vote, that means that you should be a citizen. That means that you should be here for a while. You don't need campaign information in your language. There's no need for that. A person that's already here and is a citizen and qualified for voting, they should not have. They should be English fluent at that point. So why do you need that? But no, she was. Again, in my opinion, Univision, Telemundo, and Radio and Televisa Azteca, and all of these other Spanish language mediums, TV and radio media that we've got, the only thing they care about is a Spanish language audience. And rather than caring about teaching these immigrants to live within the confines of the laws of a culture, they're not helping them. And so it really, I mean, on that aspect of it, that killed me. Now, as far as the debate goes, again, I thought it was a food fight. I thought the only person that looked somewhat adult in the whole process was DeSantis. I thought Nikki Haley did a very good job in explaining herself on foreign issues. I thought Ramaswamy did a good job of talking, sounding like an adult, and sounding even apologetic for being so snotty last time in the previous one. But I think Christie really, really sounded nasty at times, including to Trump, who wasn't there. I just, Pence again continues to bore people.
He kind of lost his. Well, Christie's he's a rhino. I mean, he's on there to sabotage. Yes. That's his role.
Exactly. That seems to be his goal.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal of his contributors or the people.
So it was, at times it was very painful to watch. I had to watch it because I was helping to tweet out information, but it was very painful. And I think the sooner we get rid of some of those folks and shrink it, the better it is. But I have a feeling that a lot of those folks, in fact, I'd say all of them last night, are not going to go quietly. They're not going to leave the stage very quietly. So it'll be interesting how it's whittled down.
Yeah. I mean, what do you foresee being the outcome of this? Trump clearly has the landslide of the Republican vote. What do you see? What's the point? Like, what do you think the purpose of this? It almost seems like a charade. What's your take on?
Well, first of all, to be honest with you, I really am afraid that the Democrats see themselves on such a sinking ship. I mean, their whole messaging, all of their plans and everything else have so badly affected the American people that I really don't think that they are going to allow, and I hate to put it in those terms, but it's true. I just don't see how they are going to allow a fair election in 2024.
Right.
I mean, I just can't see that because everything that they've implemented since Biden went in fact, the first day, shutting down oil production and forcing gasoline to go through the roof, energy, which, in my opinion, started the ball rolling on prices going up in on everything. I just don't know how they are going to allow a fair election. The second thing is, I don't know how they are going to continue supporting Biden. I
Mhm.
just don't see that.
Mhm.
And given those two things, I think that whoever is going to be the Republican nominee needs to be prepared in many, many ways. I think the Republican Party needs to be prepared in many, many ways. I think the American voter needs to be prepared in many, many ways.
Mhm.
And I am not sure if we are. I think we're too busy fighting with one another here in Texas. We've just had a very nasty, uh, a very nasty impeachment hearing
Right.
regarding our attorney general,
Mhm.
and the circular firing squad has been formed by the Republicans, and they're all shooting at each other already.
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good. I don't know if you noticed, but in the past, a lot of dead people have voted Democrat, and
Mm.
I think we might be going down that road, watching that again. Uh,
Right.
I'm very, very worried about that.
Yeah. Well, that and also another January 6th. That's one
Yes.
thing I heard on Glenn Beck's show. He had a guest saying, "Hey, look, this is political warfare. The whole, the powder keg that was January 6th. We need to be cautious of another one of those. We need to mind our P's and Q's and be gentlemen and ladies."
Exactly.
And,
Exactly. Because, I have been in many situations where I am debating someone very civilly, and all of a sudden they will scream and say, well, I feel threatened by you.
Mhm.
And you turn around and you're, threatened over. These folks are very easily triggered and make a scene very, very, very easily.
Right.
It's not far from thinking that that a lot of these liberals will scream and yell that that they are being threatened, or that there is a noticeable fear, or they have a verifiable fear in some form or fashion, and that could shut down an election. That could shut down a campaign. I mean, it's very, very. I can see it happening.
Yeah. Well, and I'm even concerned about if Trump. I mean, I believe he will get in next year. I see that happening, and I'm even concerned about after the fact.
Yes.
What would happen after the fact?
Well, yeah. If you remember, I had a couple of friends here in San Antonio who are police officers
Uh-huh.
who were on detail when Trump won. When was it? What was it? 2012, 2020?
When he was
Yeah, the first time. The first
2016,
time he
right?
won. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
2016 when he
Yeah.
first won.
Yeah.
And so they went and they saw some protesters and everything else. However, they were prepared, like all we were, like everyone else, that he was going to be reelected, and they were prepared that there was going to be a real nasty scene in Washington D.C. with protesters.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't win, but there were still and the police officers were not invited. None of the police officers from around the country were invited back to be part of the detail. Everything was handled by DC and the DC police and everything else. So if Trump were to win in 2024, the January 2025 inauguration, I think it will be a riot.
Yeah.
It will.
Yeah.
I really do believe that.
Yeah. I'm concerned, but it's almost like there's these necessary eruptions that need to happen.
Yes. Yes. Unfortunately.
But we have to just do our best to maintain the high road and just do this thing as legitly as we possibly can. We
got to keep people calm. We got to keep them calm. We've got to keep them focused.
Right.
Again, as Christians, we've got to believe that truth always wins.
Right.
And that the right always prevails.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that. I think we are seeing it now.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the aftermath of George Floyd, in the aftermath of COVID, in the aftermath of everything that's happened, the attacks against Trump, the collusion attacks,
mm-hmm.
All of that has been proven, wrong.
Right.
And the issue is, are you patient enough, and are you steady enough to maintain moving along in the right direction? We've got to tell our folks, calm down, be cool. Let's talk reality. Let's talk facts, and I have no doubt that we will win.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into these topics, and I agree with you. I absolutely we that's just the way it is. And the way Tucker Carlson put it is like calm, collected truth is
Yes,
always the response, always, and
it
that's
is.
how it has to be. So, but before we get into these, I'm fascinated, since I started working with Hugo and meeting all these amazing Hispanic patriots, what's your story? Give us a little bit of background on you. How did you land where you are, being such a staunch freedom fighter for this nation? Such a patriot. Give us a brief story, history.
Well, I grew up here in San Antonio, and I am the youngest of five. In fact, I was very much my brothers and sisters used to remind me that I was a mistake because I was 12 years apart from them.
Oh, wow.
And so when I came along, I mean, my parents, we lived in the suburbs, and my life was kind of like Leave It to Beaver with subtitles. I would go to, I'd be out playing. Everything was in English. I'd come home. Everything was in Spanish. And it was very, very middle class. However, being middle class and being a child of the 60s, I also grew up around, the San Francisco scene, the protest scene, the Vietnam, anti-Vietnam stuff. All of that was part of me. And when I went to college, my freshman year, I went to California, Berkeley. And literally, my freshman year, I had to register past the National Guard at Berkeley. They had been having student riots. I was there at Berkeley for a year, and then I went on my Mormon mission to Mexico.
Okay.
Now, that was a big change there because, initially I thought, well, all they're doing is deporting me. But once I was in Mexico, and I was in Mexico for 2 years, I realized I was an American. I may have looked like them, I may have spoken like them, but I was an American.
Mm-hmm.
I missed fried chicken. In fact, I was a Texan. I missed the Alamo. I would hear them talk about how evil the Alamo. What do you mean the Alamo was evil? Are you kidding? I missed football. I missed everything. I missed my car. I missed hanging out with my friends on Saturdays.
Yeah.
It was it was a different world. I recognized immediately that there was something different.
Mm.
The other thing that I started to learn was in talking to people how they lived for the government.
Mm-hmm.
The government didn't live for them.
Hmm.
They lived for the government. The government was all important and all powerful, and their rights came from the government,
Mm-hmm.
not the other way around. And those things began to pop into my mind. Then I had an opportunity to hear some. I was working near one of the universities, and I had an opportunity to go down and hear a communist guerrilla speaking underground one evening at this college there in Cuernavaca, Mexico.
Oh my gosh!
It just scared the heck out of me. I realized these people are saying the same thing that the leftists are saying in the United States.
Right.
And I came home. I went to BYU. I ended up getting an internship in the Ford administration. Went to work in Washington, D.C. Loved it. Fell in love. Then after that, I got involved in the Reagan campaign.
All right.
I got lucky to go to work for Mr. Reagan in the White House on the first day of that he was there. And from then on, I just began to, learn. I became real close friends with folks over at the Heritage Foundation, and my credentials for conservatism just kept growing because I knew I was hearing facts. I was hearing the truth.
Yeah.
And I had seen what the other side has to offer, and it was rather so. I ended up working in the Reagan administration for 8 years, and then in the Bush administration for 4 years, and then I went to work up on Capitol Hill for a little while, and then back with the second Bush administration, and then finally I came home to retire, and I became a Tea Party president.
All right.
When I became a Tea Party president, I became more conservative.
Yeah. That's cool.
So, then I started doing podcasts and started doing speeches, and here I am.
All right. That's awesome. Guy, professional.
Yes.
But
Somewhat.
the story, that's the beauty. That's the beautiful thing about our nation. It's like, you go anywhere else in the world, you're going to want to come home at some point.
Exactly.
At some point, you will want to come home. I don't care what your heritage is.
Exactly. I consider myself an American of Mexican descent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you are probably an American of German descent or Dutch descent or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Scandinavian English.
A Scandinavian, if you go and if you were to be in Scandinavia 2-3 years, you'd miss it.
Oh, yeah.
They have mountains there, but you'd miss your mountains. You'd probably miss the Broncos.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I lived in the Caribbean for a couple of years. I was doing some schooling down there, and I missed going to a Starbucks, not anymore,
Yes.
not anymore. We don't go there anymore. I missed, I missed just
hamburgers. I missed hamburgers. Yeah. I missed going to get a cheeseburger with chili or something. It's something, some French fries.
But there's something even deeper in this country that it's different. Like, I was talking about this on a previous show, going through history with my son. We wanted to study some French history, and we were going, looking at Napoleon and the whole history there, and all that's amazing. But, studying that versus like the American Revolution, most of history is conquest, which that's the brush everybody wants to paint America,
exactly.
The United States.
Well, because it's easy. You've got the mean conquerors, and then you've got the victims.
Right. Well, but when you study the American Revolution, actually study it, these men were fighting for freedom. These men were fighting. They owned land. They were not military. They were not under orders. They would go fight.
Civilians.
They left. They'd come home. They'd work because they had to. They'd go back and fight. They wanted to. There's something special about this nation. I know what it is. You know what it is. We're believers. It's providence.
Yes.
It's God. This nation was
literally God shed his grace on us.
That's right. Literally. Absolutely. Literally. And you could tell.
And that's very difficult. And that's very difficult for other, not to mention envious, but very, very difficult for other countries to understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I really loved from the PBS special, The American Revolution,
mm-hmm.
there's this one part in there, and I was there. I got to visit it, the Battle of Saratoga,
mm-hmm.
where the British are marching down from Canada, and they've got Hessian. They've got Hessian German mercenaries with them.
Okay.
And Burgoyne sends out the German mercenaries to go get some food from the local farmers. Just go take it and bring it back.
Yeah.
And these Hessians, of course, take off. And the minute they get close to some farms, they got shot at.
Huh.
And they were just in panic, and they came running back.
Uh-huh.
Because they were not used to farmers.
Right. Citizens
having guns, right. And they were just in a panic, and they came back and they told Burgoyne, but we didn't get anything because these guys have guns.
Yeah.
Welcome to America.
That's right. Well, and that's what keeps us from being invaded.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, behind every blade of grass, you're going to have a barrel staring you down. Yeah. That's why we don't. That's why China has not stormed our beaches. That's why.
That's exactly. Or Japan never did it because Yamamoto told them. He said, "No, I've been there. They got guns."
Yeah.
And it is the other thing that really and I don't know if any of the listeners and I encourage everybody to do it if it's at all possible. Going to Independence Hall and listening to the final day of the debate to sign the Declaration of Independence.
Okay.
And it was to me, it was the most emotional moment that I have ever felt when it comes to government. It was so emotional because all of them stood to lose everything mm-hmm. if the United States lost. But at the same time, they kept talking about how Providence mm-hmm. was inspiring them. Providence was inspiring them, and how each one of them stood up and signed. And it is emotional beyond belief. And I mean, if you cannot see the hand of God in our revolution, then it's well, you know, the progress of our nation until today. But you know, the progress of our nation, it's you know, you'd have to kind of be blind or non-believing. I mean, one or the other.
Yeah.
But even the crossing of the Delaware, you know, everything just worked out perfect for George Washington. He comes across, catches the Hessians or the Germans again asleep, and he wins a major victory. The escape, when he escaped from Manhattan, from New York, he literally ferried every single one of his men out in the dark of fog, and that fog didn't lift until they were all across. Then all of a sudden, it magically lifts, and they were gone.
Yeah,
you know, it's amazing.
It's Bible stories. I mean, you read about the American Revolution. It's the same as the Old Testament. David and his mighty men. You know, Gideon and his 300 against thousands. David had 12 mighty men, I believe. My number might be off, but they took on thousands. That's what Washington had, a Davidic anointing on him. That's why he had multiple horses shot out from under him. His coat was riddled with bullets. He would literally stand up on the ridge and stare down the British and all the mercenaries.
He was the tallest man. Yeah. He was a huge man. I mean, for his age, for his era, he was tall. He was huge. He was easily an easy target, but no.
Yeah, they couldn't hit him. He was on the Native American. The Native American mercenaries would say he had the Great Spirit on him.
Exactly.
So, anyways,
it was fantastic. And you know, again, the situation, and we can talk about this border issue, because I mean, this whole thing is something that I worry about, because from the very beginning of America, Americans have been coming to be economically free. Which in turn, an economically free person is the worst nightmare for a tyrant, because they can't control someone who's economically free. You can't control them. I mean, they're free. They've got their, and from that moment, I mean, the whole American dream has been about becoming economically independent. All of a sudden now, in today's America, we have people who are being brought into the United States and taken care of from the time that they get here. Now, when I did my master's work in college, I studied about political bosses, and the way that political bosses always operated and kept people in line is by controlling them economically.
Yeah.
The minute they got off the boats, you know, you work for me, I provide you some housing, but then you vote. You vote the way I want. And of course, you know, that meant that kept the political bosses and the political machine in power. And that happened, you know, Tammany Hall, most famous in New York, with the Irish, Mayor Daley in Chicago with the blacks, here in South Texas, George Parr with the Mexican immigrants. It's always been. And now on a bigger scale, on a supermarket scale, we've got all of these folks crossing the border and being taken care of by nonprofit organizations.
Right.
It's the same game. It's the same game.
Yeah.
And rather than integrating them into America economically and culturally, we're gonna segregate them because of diversity. Right. I really worry about.
Oh yeah. Well, what the illegal immigrants are receiving more than Social Security recipients, almost twice as much, 1,300 to like 2,400, I believe, is what. So 13 being the Social Security recipients. And what does that do? I mean, it's the same type of victim mentality that we're seeing with like the BLM and Black Americans. Hey, reparations, all these things. It's a victimhood. It's a dependence.
Exactly. There is a school of thought, and there's a professor, and I can't remember the guy's name, but also at the University of Colorado and one in Northern Colorado. But these guys, they're Chicano studies professors, and they preach very, very strongly that, of course, the Southwest is part of Mexico, and we owe not only to Mexicans, but to the entire third world, that America owes them for exploiting them.
Mm-hmm.
I got news for you. Again, I got news for you. That throughout history, there has been a clash of cultures, and the stronger culture always wins.
Right.
When the British, when the Europeans came to the Americas, it was a clash of culture, and the Europeans won because they had the superior culture. That really, I mean, you've got Chicano studies professors that freak out when I say that, but the fact is that if the Aztecs had been equally at the same level in culture, why didn't they discover Europe?
Right.
You know, why didn't they colonize England? Well, it's, you know, the fact is there. So what we've got now are people with this victimhood being preached to, that, you know, that we owe them something, that you know, we give tons of money in aid to all of these countries that are sending us their illegal aliens. Give them tons. Now,
and they're not getting it. The citizens aren't getting it.
I know it's not. Why? Because the doggone corrupt politicians at the top get it.
Right.
And so we're paying them, the corrupt politicians, as well as we're also going to pay, you know, their citizens who are here illegally. I mean, come on, you know, enough is enough.
Yeah. And you know, when I grew up in Southern California, and, you know, I used to cross the border for riffraff when I was in high school, but then I got saved and I moved up to Santa Cruz, California, Holy Cross, you know, and I started going down.
There's a lot of vampires there, I hear.
Yeah. A lot of real witches, a lot of weird witchcraft stuff that
Weird
goes on in the mountains there. But we used to go down to a children's home in Rosarito and build. We were building homes. We used to go down and build pop houses in Mexicali and Tijuana and all these places. And it's like the one thing that struck me is, like, here we cross the border from San Diego to Mexico, and it's all of a sudden like it's a different world, right? You have people, these little like 10 by 10, 4 walls and a roof homes we were building for the poor people living in squalor. This lady had her baby basically in this little wooden shed that we built for them. I mean, you can't. So what are you going to do? I mean, it's not the geography that makes this land great. It's everything that we're built on. So what happens if we become like the countries that, you know, it's just backwards thinking.
Exactly. No, it is a culture thing. It is a cultural phenomenon that America was based on, that America was blessed by being based on three things: a Western European culture, a culture of Christianity, Judeo-Christian values, and a culture of the Protestant ethic of building for yourself. Those three things have influenced our nation and made it what it is.
Right.
And you know, the thing is that the minute how do you explain it? That the minute that a Mexican crosses the border and adopts the new culture, flourishes. I mean, how do you explain that?
Right.
Yet, you know, somebody of his same generation across the border, you know, struggles. Well, the difference is that the government and the culture are based on something different than us. We have seen that with every immigrant group that has come to the United States. They have flourished once they got here. The biggest problem the Jews have had is that they've acculturated. You have Jews now, Jews that have been very, very upset that they're losing their Jewishness. And the reason being because, you know, nobody cared.
Right.
I mean, like, you know, in my case, you know, I can see a Jew and I can't tell the difference between a Jew or a Baptist. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the Old Testament. I mean, that's what happened when Solomon ascended to the throne. He invited all kinds of, he had a bunch of pagan harlot, not harlots, but concubines, and a bunch of wives, and he brought in all this kinds of idolatry, and that led to a succession of evil, rebellious kings, evil, rebellious Israel. And guess what? They were taken over by Babylon, and they were sent into exile under the Babylonian king. And that's where Daniel and the lion's den, that was all under Nebuchadnezzar. So the point is when you bring in this, you're unfaithful to God, who has blessed Israel unbelievably. And this country, we are direct descendants of Israel. That's why we're called the New Israel, all the way through Europe and out to us now. Right. We are descended from Israel. So it's, it's the blessing. And if you turn your back,
and if we don't convert these people, if we don't convert them, and you can call it conversion, you can call them,
I'd say adoption.
Adoption. If they don't change to us, and we don't try to change them, then they are, they're going to be an anathema to us. It's going to be, there's going to be problems, because diversity, it doesn't work. Diversity does not work.
Well, it's like when you adopt. We're a nation of adoption. That's the gospel. God adopts us into his family through Jesus Christ, the firstborn, only begotten. We're all adopted children of God other than him. And the point is our nation is like that. We've talked about this. We are a nation of adopted children that have, we adopt. And that's the point. When you adopt a child, that child takes on your name.
Exactly.
And becomes a part of your family. And that child, doesn't matter where that heritage is from, that child is now, let's say I adopt a baby from Ghana and West Africa. That Ghanaian baby is Ghanaian descent, but he's now a Wilkinson.
Exactly.
And he is now as much my child as my own flesh and blood son Jack is. And he is as much my family. And that child needs to take on that pride of being, hey, I adopted you. You're mine now. You are my child. You have a father. And that's the way I see it with immigrants.
Every immigrant that crosses into the United States and becomes part of the United States should be adopted, should adapt, should convert, should become an American, period. And once they become an American, then they will do whatever they can to protect the Constitution, to protect our way of life, to protect our culture. However, we've got these liberals, these non-believers who consistently say, no, you got to respect them. If they, if they chop the heads off chickens and dance around in the night, you got to respect that. That is not what should be happening in our country. We are diverse in our looks. We need to be unified in our beliefs.
As far as patriotism goes, right? Like, I mean, it's
yes,
the line. We never can coerce people.
Our belief in our country,
right.
Belief in our country. That's what we need to be. We should believe in the Constitution. We should believe in the American heritage, the political heritage. We should adopt that. However, we've got too many people who are willingly professing that everybody's a victim and therefore everybody is owed something. That causes problems.
Yeah, according to my grandmother, I have I'm a descendant of one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, and I have a father-in-law who was migrated from South Korea. Legally they came over and went through the process, and my mother-in-law still barely speaks English, not because she doesn't want to, just out of fear and all that. But I tell my father-in-law, you're as much American as I am.
Yeah.
Like this, there's no royalty here. There's no caste system here. We're all equal citizens. Once you are an American citizen, you're a citizen. You're a voting American citizen. We're all immigrants. And so anyways, yeah, totally. And it's a pride thing. It's the best for the immigrants too. This isn't just, hey, fall in line and let us subjugate you. This is, hey, adopt our way of life and you will reap the benefits as much as we all do. This is a caring and love type of thing. We're trying to preserve something for all American citizens, regardless of your background or, whatever. That's the freedom. That's the beauty of it. And that's what makes it different than any country in history is we're all equal. We're all equal.
Right. That's right. The whole idea of having economic freedom and liberty. Let me get back to that because that's very, very key. Economic freedom and liberty is something very, very key throughout the history of the world. Mm-hmm. If you've noticed from the history of the world, the tribalism, the feudal system, everything depended on people being dependent on each other for food and everything else. It wasn't until the American ideal that suddenly a person could do for themselves and then still be part of the community. That you were a farmer, that you were a blacksmith, that you were whatever, and you contributed, but you kept your freedom of growth, economic growth, but at the same time you were still part of the community. Mm-hmm. That whole idea now is being thrown out the window, and it's being preached that the community is what you need, and really you should be what the community needs. Well, mm-hmm. What does that mean? I mean, mm-hmm. Suppose I don't want to be a pharmacist. Suppose right. I don't want to work in that given field that the community wants. What is that all about? Right. However, again, when you've got a tyrant, when you've got a king, when you've got a tribal leader, right, who's dictating to you what you're going to be when you grow up, that is a complete opposite from the American ideal of you work at what you want to do and you are the best at what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And that is something that is being challenged tremendously in today's America, and we need to really, really push it. We need to explain to people, without economic freedom, without you having economic freedom and liberty, then political freedom evaporates, because then you become you become dependent on the rest of the government.
Right. Absolutely. It's a cage. It's a cage. And in these systems that are supposed to equalize people by force, all they do is equalize everybody down to the impoverished.
Exactly.
Because whoever controls the money, absolute power corrupts, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. I mean, you think I don't understand this. Oh, we're against runaway capitalism. What do you think putting the government in charge of everything is going to be? That's like saying, let's just get rid of all of the competition and throw all our eggs into Google's basket and just have them run the whole show.
Exactly.
That's what communism and socialism, socialism is just communism in diapers. That's what it's all about. And it doesn't make sense.
And it hasn't worked. Again, it's never worked. Whenever a tyrant tries to be the tyrant a single person or a commissar or a bunch of commissars or whatever, whenever somebody tries to forces everybody to be equal, then everybody is impoverished. Mm-hmm. Everybody's impoverished because some people, the parable of the talents. Mm-hmm. Some people have greater talents than others. Some people are going to achieve more than others. Right. And that's all there is to it. So what are you going to do? Take away from those that achieve and to satisfy those that don't? Mm-hmm. I mean, where is that logic?
Mm-hmm. Well, and the beauty of our free market is that's the safeguard right there. Because that's what I've been seeing, all these woke, all these big corporations that are all going DEI and all this, because they're getting their strings pulled by BlackRock and these other big, the powers that are controlling the whole thing. Well, guess what? The way I see it is we have this golden opportunity. I have a friend I was listening to, they started Diapers for Life, like Life Diapers or something, as a podcast. When Huggies and all the major baby companies are throwing all their money towards, overturning the Roe v. Wade decision and sending their employees out to abort babies in other states, this one company says, well, turns out most mothers are actually pro-life, at least half of them, and they're alienating half of the competition. So now they start this, pro-life diaper company and they're cleaning up, and that's the free market, like checking and balancing this whole situation that we're seeing. So, I mean, that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this country. So anyways, what do you want to go? I want to hear more about, so we're talking about the border crisis. We got historical roots. You talked about that a little bit. Tell me, what do you want to go here? Do you want to talk more about the border or Hispanic Heritage Month? What do you?
Well, we can talk about the border and the Hispanic Heritage Month at the same time, because Hispanic Heritage Month right now, for some reason, it's not as big as it was. And I think I know that the reason that it's not as big as it was. When people talk about Hispanics, I always like to ask them, well, which ones are you talking about? And what do I mean by that? Well, there are Hispanics come in every single color as well as every single nationality. When you talk about Hispanics, you can talk about Europeans. Which Europeans? The Germans, the English? What are you talking about?
Right.
The Hispanic, the Mexican, should I say, the Mexican experience in the Southwest is radically different than the Cuban or the Puerto Rican. Yeah, I mean, I never, to be honest with you, until I went to Washington, D.C., my junior year in college, to do my internship, I had never met a Cuban or a Puerto Rican. I had never met a Cuban or a Puerto Rican. When I went to work in the Reagan White House, I met my first Cuban who was Black. And I remember looking at him. I mean, he thought it was very funny. I thought it was, I'm glad I didn't offend him, but he was Black and he was talking Spanish. And I kept looking at him like,
you were tripping out. Yeah.
I was tripping out. I mean, wow.
I grew up in Southern California. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It was incredible. It was incredible. So, I mean, it was that kind of a situation. Is that which ones are you talking about? The other thing, even when you talk about the Southwest Hispanics, the Mexicans, I mean, right there in Southern Colorado, right on the Colorado-New Mexico border, you've got all of these Hispanos who have been there since the 16th century. And when you talk Spanish to those folks, when the ones that still speak Spanish, they speak this Castilian Spanish from the 16th century. They don't speak Mexican and Spanish. It's very different. Yeah, it is. Then you go further down the Rio Grande, right there in New Mexico, and you run into the Pueblo and Zuni Indians, who all have Spanish-speaking names. Some of them who speak Spanish, but they are Native Americans. So which, are you talking about those Hispanics?
Right.
Then, of course, you go down to Laredo, Texas, my birthplace, and which Hispanics are you talking about there? Are you talking about the ones in Laredo who have their roots since the 1800s when they came across and they stayed, or those that have just crossed the border? Which ones are you talking about?
Right.
Now, in today's America, here at the San Antonio Migrant Center, it's full of Venezuelans who just arrived. Tons of Venezuelans.
Okay.
And so, which Hispanic? Because
of the border crisis? What's going on?
Because of the border crisis.
Right. And they're all coming over from socialist Venezuela.
They're all, the place is packed. The San Antonio Migrant Center was set up to accommodate 500 individuals a week. And the way that they were going to do it was that through the Biden administration, they were going to check where they wanted to go. Right. They were going to they would buy their ticket, flight or bus, and send them on their way. All done very quietly under the table. But now you've got this flood, and there are well over 5,000 every day at that migrant center. It's overflowing.
Yeah,
the vast majority of them are from Venezuela. The whole story is out in Venezuela. Come now, because you can get in. Once you get into the United States, you're here to stay. Mm-hmm. And so their experience in immigration is going to be radically different. Mm-hmm. It's their style. I had never eaten Cuban food until I went to Washington, D.C. I'd never eaten Puerto Rican food until I went to Washington, D.C.
Right,
so,
right.
They're very, very different, and they are very, very competitive with one another. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the kicker. The longer they are here, the more they are Americanized. All of them. The more they are mostly Americanized. Mm-hmm. For example, in my family, When I sit down at the Thanksgiving dinner table, I've got grandnephews. Last names are LaFleur, Roberts, Hersey. Those are the grandkids, and so they have mixed. They have mixed. So therefore, when you talk about celebrating Hispanic Heritage Week, I think the only people that are really gung ho about it are the militant nationalists, the liberals, the leftists that somehow want to establish and segregate Hispanics out. And even when they do it, they're falling flat on their face. Another example I can give you about Hispanic Heritage Week. There was a Hispanic Heritage Week Hispanic Heritage Month event here in San Antonio a couple of weeks ago when it started. And it was at a VFW hall, all these veterans, okay? Very Hispanic, a very Mexican-American VFW hall. And some liberal, I guess trying to make number, shows up with some transgender Hispanics at the Veterans Hall. Those Hispanic veterans, these macho Hispanic veterans, these guys who had been in the Marine, it went over like a lead balloon. It went over like a lead balloon. And then they forgot to pledge allegiance to the flag. They're in a VFW hall and they forgot to pledge allegiance to the flag. And so again, this whole situation with the border has really emphasized to the Hispanic community, to all of the Hispanics who are American, to all of the Americans who are of Hispanic descent, it's emphasized to them how American they are. Because the vast majority of them came legally into the United States. They weren't conquered. They weren't dragged here as slaves. They came here legally. And now you're letting anybody just come in and that's the end of it. And giving the money on top of that. Giving the money. So, Hispanic Heritage Week Month is not playing out the way that the liberals would like it to do.
Well, and then you almost, it's like, because most traditional Mexicans I know, they're very conservative.
Yes.
And a lot of the Mexicans that are actually still in, I'm talking about Mexicans, not Mexican Americans. They would look at this whole Latinx culture and they would, like, what is this? What is this? I mean, it's almost like I wonder if this will backfire.
I think it is. No, I think
we gave all these immigrants amnesty, but take out the terrorists and the enemies of America. I'm talking about like these Venezuelans that are just trying to seek refuge. They're gonna wake up and be like, oh wait, these Democrats are nuts. Like,
well, you've got the latest poll today that was announced by Fox News has Biden 57% against Latinos, 57% against him, and something like less than 30% for him.
Wow.
I mean, and that is unheard of. That has never happened. But then again, any American of Mexican descent in Texas or in Colorado or anywhere that goes and fills up their gas tank right now, what do you think they're going to think?
Oh yeah.
And lots of us drive trucks.
And you tell, like, Mexicans are like, Mexicans are some of the hardest working and proud in the good sense of the word people I've ever met. I mean, they're the ones doing, like, I was in the trades. I've been in the trades most of my life, and roofing, most of these guys are Mexicans. They're working their butts off, sending money home. And if you were to be like, hey, we'll give you a free 3 hots and a cot and, a little allowance, or do you want to make your own way? You ask 90% of them are be like, no, I don't want any handouts. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, so the culture in general, the Latino culture are very conservative by nature and by value. And that's the whole purpose of this podcast that Hugo's doing. It's like,
now let me tell you. Now let me tell you. Let's transition into the last part of it. the communications, the liberal communications. If there is any enemy of America right now, besides the crazy leftists and their agenda, but it's the liberal communications, the liberal media.
Okay.
And for the Hispanics, it's the Spanish language media, as well as the media in general.
Right.
There is an absolute effort to stereotype and keep Latinos convinced that they are victims, that they are helpless, and that they are somehow they've got to be respected. They are. The media goes out of it, whether it's in the news or whether it's in the entertainment industry. They do it in both ways. In the news, when the Haitian crisis down in Del Rio was happening, and all these Haitians, there were 5,000 Haitians, no, 10,000 Haitians were underneath the bridge, waiting to get into the United States. Al Sharpton came down, and he was going to stand up against the racist border patrol. He was going to stand up and scream at them and whatnot. So he arrives with his little entourage, gets out. All of the cameras are there, and they all, focus on him. And he starts to scream at the racist border patrol. He turns around, and every single border patrol agent there was of Mexican descent. Every single one of them.
Wow.
Not to mention that there were lots of protesters there against Al Sharpton who were of Mexican descent.
Yeah.
The media never said anything about that. The media never. The New York Times, CNN, NBC, CBS, all of them were there. They never showed the faces of the protesters. They never interviewed a protester. They never showed anything other than Al Sharpton's face, him screaming, and then pictures of the Haitians down below. Another example, we have the situation of Trump supporters. We had a big Trump rally here in San Antonio during the last campaign, and there were some BLM, some Black Lives Matter, and Antifa folks that tried to disrupt it.
Of course, right.
They were chased off, of course, as they do, but they went screaming and yelling, and of course the cameras followed them. And then they said that they accused the police of being racist and not stopping the attack. Three things they never mentioned. They never mentioned that the vast majority of the Trump supporters that were there were Hispanic, were of Mexican descent. They never mentioned that.
Wow.
They never mentioned that the police officers were overwhelmingly of Mexican descent, and they never mentioned, of course, that these Black Lives Matter and Antifa folks had done the provoking. Nothing like that.
Right.
Nothing like that. And it is one of these situations. The final one is a recent school district battle that is now taking place here in San Antonio as we speak. But there is an effort still by some teachers to have rainbow flags in their classrooms. And the mothers who are of Mexican descent have said, no, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do that.
Right.
Never is there talk about a clash of culture over those folks who don't want the rainbow flags. It's all just about the civil rights of the gays.
Right.
The media just manipulates everything.
Right. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the same. Like January 6th is the biggest example of that. Look at all this footage coming out. It was all, most of it's instigated by, so anyways, that's a different story. But of course, and what you're talking about with the media, that's because immigrants, my father-in-law, he watches, either mainstream media or Korean, and so they vote like they're very liberal minded because that's the only channel they're getting. And that's the thing. It's the GOP. We need to bring like the Latin American community needs to understand like this is your party.
Exactly.
I love the fact that we're 30% here and in California, Hispanic culture, like give me Hispanic culture any day of the week because we share the same values.
Mm-hmm.
We both love Jesus. We both love faith. We love family and freedom, you know? And so that's anyways. So what,
we have a very defined idea of what a family is.
right. Absolutely. Well, and so does God. And, you know, and really at the end of the day, it is a clash of, like, if you look at the Marxist, all the way, you know, any Marxist throughout history mostly have been atheists.
Yes.
Trying to normalize their sexual deviancies, you know?
Exactly.
And it's like, this is, at the end of the day, this is a spiritual battle.
It is a spiritual culture. It is.
We're not waging war against flesh and blood, but against principalities, you know, arguments, any high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And so it's like that at the end of the day is the fight.
That's right.
And so all, you know, people are all, we're all equal image bearers of God, and God loves all people equally. And I like, so anyways, all that being said, you know, we're running out of time here. We got to wrap this up, but you know, what would you say to the young Hispanics out there, the young Latinx culture that they're slurping this up with a straw, like you know, the woke?
I would tell them what I told some folks last Monday that I spoke up in Dallas. I would tell them that I have a testimony of God, which means that I have a testimony of good. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're going to have a testimony about good, you're going to have a testimony about evil. Mm-hmm. You're going to understand and recognize that there's also evil. Mm-hmm. You can't have good, you can't have light without darkness. Mm-hmm. And there is a real battle for them, for between light and darkness. There is a real battle with them, and many of them feel insecure because they don't feed themselves spiritually. They don't feed themselves a dose of divinity. Mm-hmm. And that's what they need to do, because once they do, then they begin truth, light. It's logical. Mm-hmm. And you begin to realize logically all of these arguments that are being proposed by the left, they're false. They're fake. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know,
counterfeit.
They're counterfeit.
Right.
I mean, it is the same deal as when Moses went before Pharaoh and threw down his staff and it turned into a snake. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the magicians of Pharaoh threw down their staffs and they all became snakes too. Mm-hmm. So immediately the Pharaoh says, well, big deal. Okay. Aha. But then Moses' staff swallowed theirs. Mm-hmm. Same thing. The left proposes all sorts of ideas that all love is equal. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, not really. Mm-hmm. You know, that all human beings are equal. Well, no, not. I mean, I would like to play for the Spurs, but I'm only 5'8". Mm-hmm. You know, not to mention 70 years old.
We're equal in value, but we're not.
Yeah, and
that's the equity thing.
Counterfeit. Yeah, they counterfeit these things. Satan has made a mockery of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And only when you're logical and you pray and you seek the Spirit to guide you do you find out that it's different. Mm-hmm. Or can you tell the difference?
It goes back to the garden, right? Yeah. That's what Satan. He deceived
Adam. It's a good apple. Come on.
Yeah. Did God really say? Did God really say?
Yeah, it's really.
It's all about deception, you know. So, yeah, I hear you. I mean, that's great. Well, thank you, George.
My pleasure.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm normally producing back scenes, doing the ticker and all the stuff. I wasn't able to do that because I wanted to stay engaged in the conversation. But what I'm going to do once I post these and get them all up, I'm going to have George. I'm going to put all of George's show information on there. I'm going to start watching them. George, what's your it's at Saturdays at 2
o'clock Central Time. But I always post on my social page. I always post the link to the show so people can listen to it. If they miss the show live, they can listen to it at a later time.
Well, I'm going to put all of George's information up in our show notes, and make sure you go follow him on social, listen to his stuff. It's been a true privilege, and I would love to have you back when Hugo's back in town sometime to get him on the action. If
you got it, I'd love to be back as a guest anytime.
Schedule. Well,
Thank
God
you very
bless
much,
you, George. Keep up the good fight, and it's been an honor. I'm look at your life. Your story is a testament. I mean, it's cool. It's cool to see.
It has been great. I've had a very blessed life, that's for sure.
Well, good, and you will continue to do so. So truth wins, and so right on. Bless you, bro.
Thank you very, very much for having me.
Thank you, sir.